ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेमदेवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो बुद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम। प्रश्नोपनिषद प्रश्न 2 मंत्र 7। Explanation thereof. This is one of the highlights of beauty in this Upanishad, to declare that as devoted lovers, the Indriyas are bringing their impressions of the external world of objects. A similar hymn to the prana is seen in Atharva Veda 2nd 4:19. Many happy reminiscences of this hymn are seen in Prashnopanishad. World of objects is something which is at once passionately beautiful and innately bountiful. A seeker who is well grounded in this noble idea can with the glitter of Maya. He can never be caught up by the tentacles of sensuousness. All that he sees or enjoys are but offerings brought to the altars of the prana. All sounds heard are but oblations to the prana. All smells and touch are but hymns sung at the feet of the Supreme within. Whatever he who goes out to face life with this perennial consciousness of the Supreme within does thereafter is nothing but a glorious prana puja. Herein is amplified the entire depth of significance in Krishna's advice to Arjun. Mam anusmara yudhya cha. Remembering me continuously go about. Arjun fighting the battle of life. Mantra 8. Verse number 8. देवानामसि वह्नितमः पितॄणां प्रथमा स्वधा ऋषीणां चरितं सत्यमथर्वाङ्गिरसामसि. Thou art the best carrier to the gods, and thou carry the first oblation to the forefathers. Thou art the true dynamic principle behind the senses, upapranas, which are the chief factors of the body. Continuing the glorification, we are told how the prana is, in its fire form, manifestation as fire, carrier or the conveyor of our oblations to the world of the mains. The prana is the main factor behind the sense organs, because without the prana, the sense organs cannot function independently. Bereft of the prana, the indriyas retire from all activities and become impotent in serving the body. The prana is that chief factor which, through its subdivisions or assistants, supervises and executes the job of perception through the sense organs. Mantra number 9. इन्द्रस्त्वं प्राणतेजसा रुद्रोऽसि परिरक्षिता त्वमन्तरिक्षे चरसि सूर्यस्त्वं ज्योतिषां पतिः. O Pran, the Lord Indra of all energy, thou art Rudra in prowess and the protector. Thou movest in the sky. Thou art the sun, the Lord of all life. In this stanza, we are reminded of what we have been already told in the earlier descriptions of the prana, that he is the total energy, who is nothing other than the sun. This verse, however, gives us one more idea, that the total energy is himself nothing other than the non-dual factor behind, behind the Trinity. He himself is, if he is Indra, the creator, Rudra, the destroyer, and Vishnu, the protector. Indra is the presiding deity of the mind, and as such, he is certainly the creator, because all creative faculties become active in us only when our minds function. Mantra number 10. Yada tvamabhivarshasya themah pranate prajaha आनन्दरूपास्तिष्ठन्ति कामायान्नं भविष्यतीति. O Prana, when you cause the rain to shower down, these creatures of the glory sit delighted, hoping that there will be as much food as they desire. Even in these days of tractors and fertilizers, artificial germination and induced insemination, science has not replaced nature in the field of food production. Irrigational canals may bring distant lands under cultivation, and in our annual reports, we may even dare to declare our self-sufficiency and independence from natural rains. And yet, even today, we must admit that rain at the appropriate time can bless agriculture a million times more than all our scientific and artificial methods put together. A true farmer's heart enjoys only when the rains are pattering over his plowed fields amidst claps of thunder and flashes of lightning. It is very well known that a shower thrills the fields much more than the canal waters, which with their stagnant sterility. As the sun, the prana, as it has been already described, is the Lord of the clouds. It is thus the prana alone that comes down in the form of rain to manifest itself as the seedling and serves as food for the creatures. When thus the rain comes, the creatures of the prana sit in their farmyards and smile in optimistic joy at the prospect of much food. The modern economist would declare that even today plenty of food causes true prosperity, since food price determines the wages and consequently the prices in the market. When we analyze a little more the truth declared by the Upanishads in small doses along the length so far covered, we find that the Rishi has not budged an inch from the main Vedantic theory, that all creation in the pluralistic world is but an error of perception in us. He has said that the sun is the prana and the sun causes the clouds. Naturally, the clouds are nothing but the prana in another form. He pours down as rain and produces food. Food, therefore, is again the prana. We have been told already that the creatures are nothing but the prana since they are formed out of the essence of food, maintained in food, and they merge back into food. Therefore, the prana himself becomes the cloud prana, the rain prana, and the food prana, and makes the creature prana smile. The entire plurality and the various phenomena such as rain, germination, growth, harvesting, eating, and growing are nothing but the prana in its various manifestations. Mantra number 11. Vratyastvam pranaykarushiratta vishvasya satpatihi वयमाद्यस्य दातारः पिता त्वं मातरिश्वन्. O Pran, thou art a Vratya, an unbaptized one. Thou art the sacred fire, Ekarshi, the consumer of everything, the good Lord of the world. We are the givers of the oblations, O Father of the wind. Matarishwa, we are the givers of oblations. Thou art our Father. According to Dharma Shastra, all are born impure and each becomes pure after the sacred baptism, which is the purifying ritual to be gone through, especially by a Brahmin. That is to say, as mortals, we are born imperfect, or we may say that anything that is born is imperfect, being finite. Now, you and I, born impure, can be made pure either through the ritual with the help of a Pandit or through study with the help of a Guru or through spiritual practices at the feet of a yogi. But the prana, being the firstborn, had nobody other than himself at the time of his birth, and so he could not go through his baptism. This does not mean that the prana is imperfect or impure. On the other hand, the Shastra wants us to understand that he required no baptism since he was born so pure. Impurity starts with the perception of plurality and the consequent delusory experience that the egocentric self interests are set in opposition to the others. In the case of the prana, there were no such feelings, and as such, he was not polluted by the sins of attachment, hatred, greed, passion, cruelty, and selfishness. The prana is indeed the father of the wind, since wind cannot be where the prana is not. Mantra number 12. या ते तनूर्वाची प्रतिष्ठिता या श्रोत्रे या च चक्षुषी या च मनसि सन्तता शिवान्तां कुरुमोत्क्रमीः. O Prana, make auspicious the body which abides in speech, in the ear, in the eye, and also which prevails in the mind. Please do not go out. almost concluding the series of glorifications chanted in honor of the prana. Here is a stanza wherein, through a series of seemingly confusing words, an ocean of ideas is expressed which gives us a true inkling of the cultural glory of the Hindus. The prayer is addressed by the sense organs to the prana, that total energy in the body. It is the prana energy that makes it possible for the indriyas to function. We have understood that they are nothing but instruments and that their efficiency depends upon the quality and texture of the energy that works through them. Here, the instruments of knowledge and action are invoking the prana with a request that he may manifest his glory in all its purity and strength through them, the instruments of his expression. This stanza is clearly an echo of the very peace invocation with which we started the Upanishads. The request in that may the prana working behind our speech be pure, meaning may our words be auspicious, not only helping others to live in a greater culture, so too let my mind be pure, let my eyes see nothing but purity, and my ears come to hear nothing but auspicious things. This is perfect consonance with Hindu culture. Here, more than thirsting perfection upon others as their right, the Hindu Rishi insisted upon each individual to gear up to his duties and behaving himself naturally as true Hindu. If the prana is pure in a man, that individual's words shall be pure, and his mind also shall naturally become pure. He whose mind has become pure, his thoughts consequently shall be pure, and to such an individual, destiny shall bring nothing but auspiciousness as his experience. The prana, dividing itself into five distinct offices, does his function of vitalizing the matter envelopments constituting the body. This will be gone into in detail in the next question. But here, according to Sri Anandagiri's footnotes, Tika, upon works in our speech, Vyana controls the ears, Prana presides over the eyes, and Samana abides in the mind. It is also to noted that the Indriyas are crying out to the Prana not to leave them, not because of any cowardly fear, but because their newborn understanding has sharpened their appetite to enjoy the flow of the prana through them during all their activities of perception. To them, life has become a mission of service to the prana as his faithful instruments to fulfill his divine will. Mantra number 13. प्राणस्येदं वशे सर्वं त्रिदिवे यत् प्रतिष्ठितं मातेव पुत्रान् रक्षस्व श्रीश्च प्रज्ञां च विधेहिना इति. All this is within the control of the prana. All that is in heaven is also under its control. Protect us like a mother. Give us prosperity and wisdom. With this Brahman, we conclude the glorification of the prana, considered as the Lord of the total energy in the whole universe. Please never mistake the prana for mere atmospheric air or mere breathing. Prana is in fact, pranayama is in fact effected only when we come to control the nucleus of all energy in ourselves. For this purpose, we may start our practices through the grossest of the pranic representation, inspiration and expiration. But ultimately, pranayama is accomplished only when the entire energy content in one's form has been perfectly brought under one's own control so as to direct it in whatever fashion one deems fit. Prana viewed thus. Certainly, all this in the universe is established in energy and controlled and directed by energy. This portion of the Rishi's words sounds like the most modern declarations of the nuclear scientists of our day. They also cry that matter is established, controlled, and sustained by energy. Perhaps the only difference between the old and the new is that while the new is only toying with this idea without capitalizing on it, the old rishis had, with admirable intellectual composure, employed the discovery and pursued its possibilities, not in annihilating each other, but in blessing the entire generation of man. Out of their knowledge, they worked out the theory of man's ascent to godhood. In our modern age, every discovery is employed in bringing man to a quicker and cleaner self destruction. The horsepower is an engine in an engine can be invoked and it can be made either to convey us to our destination or to dash us to pieces against the wayside electric post. The energy that takes us to our destination and that which shatters the car into smithereens during an accident are both one and the same. In the hands of an expert, it can be directed to bless us. In the hands of a drunken fool, the same blessings becomes a curse. Here, the prayer is an invocation to the mighty energy in us, the prana, to guide us and take us straight to our destination without any wayside accidents. Protect us like a mother. This is very significant. Our request is not that the prana should protect us like the government or the policeman, nor even like our own father. These people also do protect us, but they do so because it is their duty and not because of a sympathetic understanding of our needs instinctively born out of selfless love. The mother alone can understand the unsaid needs of the child and protect it. Similarly, here, the prayer is that we, the seekers, do not ourselves know what is good for us, and we invoke the prana to bless us in all the ways we stand in need of blessings. What we invoke is not a king like patronizing prana ready to sanction what we ask for, but a mother like loving prana who will give us what we need most. Give us prosperity and wisdom. The request to the prana, the total energy, to provide us with prosperity is not to be construed in terms of dollar and sterling. This prosperity is not the rupee paisa wealth. Here, what is meant by the term is the inner wealth of divine qualities such as love, tolerance, mercy, kindness, etc. Without these, no progress in spirituality is ever possible, and hence this humble request. Iti Dvitiya Prashnaha. Here ends that second question. Query 3. Kausalya and Pippalad. The province of inquiry, which reduced itself from the extensive universe to the physical structure with its sense organs, is now again reducing itself to a more subjective field. Having understood the world of objects outside, the inquiry of the student was naturally about his own physical structure. While explaining the working of the sense organs, the teacher also, with a masterly ease in the art of teaching, has consciously diverted the unconscious student's attention to a still deeper layer of personality. He said that the indriyas are working because of the prana, and this hint sets the boys thinking about a still deeper layer in themselves. We shall be having in this chapter a discussion on this vital air sheath. Mantra number 1. अथ हैनं कौसल्यश्चाश्वलायनः पप्रच्छ भगवन् कुत एष प्राणो जायते कथमायात्यस्मिन् शरीरे आत्मानं वा प्रविभज्य कथं प्रातिष्ठते केनोत्क्रमते कथं बाह्यमभिधत्ते कथमध्यात्ममिति. Then Kausalya, son of Ashwal, questioned, O Bhagavan, whence has this pran come? How does it abide after it has divided itself? How does it go out? How does it support what is without and what is within the body? In the first two questions, we had an inquiry into what is the fundamental factor in the world of objects, and after a critical analysis, the Rishi had convinced us that it is the Creator Prajapati who himself has become matter and energy, and these dancing in each other's embrace provide us with the vital world of plurality constituting the world of objects. The student, having understood this much, came to inquire as to what are the fundamental factors in this very physical structure. The Shruti explains to us that the body is maintained by the sense organs, and they in their turn are made efficient by the play of the prana, the energy in the body. Here, in the third question, the student is taking up this new line of suggestion given by the Rishi, that here is the play of prana behind the indriyas in making a thorough inquiry into the names, nature, functions, modes of behavior, etc. of these vital factors in the body. But before he circumscribes his inquiry into the activities of the prana within the body. The student is very careful in making his knowledge thorough, and therefore he first of all asks about the very cause of the prana. Causation hunting is the main preoccupation of the fragile instrument called the human intellect. Indeed, the intellect should develop to its maximum ere it can realize its own limitations. This is obvious from our own experiences in life. The half educated scientist would have more self confidence and daring to pit his intellect against nature's mighty scheme than a matured scientist. A physics professor in his petty classroom is more fanatical than a scientist in his den of discoveries. The more one gathers knowledge in a particular branch directly from nature, the more a genius comes to despair at his own inherent inability to understand the whole. Thus, a spiritual seeker also, in the early stage of his inquiry, must necessarily invest his entire intellect into the inquiry within with a blind faith in its limitless capacities, and then only when he has climbed up to the pinnacle of his own grey matter will he realize that the source of life lies beyond the gaze of the intellect. Here we find an enthusiastic and intelligent student at the feet of the Vedantic master, making his despairing and vain attempt to understand reality though his intellect through his intellect. He is consistently asking the same question which the scientists have been asking eternally in their laboratories: whence is the prana born? To hunt for the cause of every effect that we meet with is the only method open to the intellect in its attempts to conceive or understand a thing. Keeping in view what we know of the prana as the total energy presiding over matter, we must realize that the student is now asking what the source of energy is. The question leads us to realms where the Einsteins and Newtons never dared to peep into. Modern science considers itself fulfilled when it comes to the borderlines of energy and has not yet dared to inquire still further or to investigate the source of all energy. Here, the Vedantic textbook starts with this very question. Seekers do not hesitate, however mighty the intellectual challenge may be, but they pursue investigating and inquiring into the phenomenon until they reach pure wisdom and the true knowledge. The student not only wants to understand the source of energy but also asks how exactly this universal energy comes to be clapped within this body. This inquiry proceeds to the exact method through which the main energy in the body is itself dividing into different departments of distinct activities. Again, we see that after some time, every mortal body is deserted by the prana, and the student here inquires Also, how this energizing nucleus of activity happens to get divorced from the body. In short, the question in its pregnant suggestions covers a long range of knowledge and inquiry. The full import of it will be clear to us when we go exhaustively into the answer given by the great master. Mantra 2. तस्मै सहोवाचाति प्रश्नान् पृच्छसि ब्रह्मिष्ठोऽसीति तस्मात्तेऽहं ब्रवीमि. He replied, "You ask questions touching the transcendental matter. Because you are a sincere inquirer and a good practitioner in the spiritual values, I will explain it to you." It is often the case with all enthusiasts who reach the feet of a master not to realize exactly the implication of their own impulsive questions. It is then the duty of the teacher, first of all, to make the inquirer fully alive to the entire depth and the full significance of his own question. The same is done here by Pippalada. He says that your question, being an inquiry into the very source of energy, you are asking for a factor which is not within the limited finite scope of material science. The question takes us to the realms beyond. If the answer is to be given, the teacher will have to discuss about the pure consciousness which can be comprehended only through realizing a state transcending the body, mind, and intellect. Such a theme, if discussed all of a sudden with a disciple who was not mature enough to appreciate it, would be a sheer waste of time, and as such, the great scientists of life, the rishis, used to refuse to hold such discussions with unfit students, namely those unripe in their understanding. This is not to be understood as intellectual tyranny or as a spiritual copyright claim, as it is now understood in the unseen competition and rivalry between the Brahmins and the non Brahmin sects in this country. This poisonous interpretation is itself the very venom of the decadence. The rishis understood in their most tolerant and liberal view that to teach the great truth to unprepared students was to waste the time of both the teacher and the taught. Thus, to serve the disciples more efficiently, he advised them to prepare themselves and discussed with them these themes only when he found that the student has become fit for initiation. Here, Pippalada has tested the boys and in his 1 year's contact with them understood that they are well established in their mental and intellectual qualities of concentration and diligence in pursuit of the necessary knowledge of the primary lessons and detachment from the life of senses. Truly sincere, heroically adventurous, fully discriminative, large hearted, and full of faith in the great and divine destiny of man. These students proved to be the fittest seekers, and so Pippalad says, "I will explain to thee." By this conversation, The Shruti is warning both the teacher and the taught against any hasty dash into spirituality and insists upon the urgency and austerity. Mantra number 3. यते यथैषा पुरुषेच्छायैतस्मिन्नेतदाततं मनोकृतेनायात्यस्मिन् शरीरे. This pran is born of the Atman, as shadow is born of the man, so is the pran of the self. By the action of the mind, it enters into this body. Answering the questions one by one, the Master readily gives this sacred thought which forms the core of the Upanishad. The very first question was, from where does the energy pran rise up? We already know that energy and matter are nothing but the Hiranyagarbha, the total mind. Thus, the question restated would be, from where does the mind rise? The answer given here is that it rises up from the Atman or the pure consciousness center in us, which is the life spark in each individual. To say that something is born out of this spiritual center would be a false philosophical statement, since the cause will have to die away to become the effect. The gold piece must get itself destroyed in becoming the chain round your beloved's neck. The seed must perish to bring forth the tree. The mother will have to destroy her maidenhood to bring forth the child. Similarly, if the pran were to come from the Atman, it would be amounting to saying that the Supreme Reality has destroyed itself to become the total mind, the Creator, and yet the Guru was compelled to make this statement as a great answer to this plain and pointed question. Because of this philosophical contradiction implied in the statement, this pran is born out of the Atman. The Rishi is compelled to add, almost in the same breath, as it were, a clarification and explain that the pran is to the Atman what the reflection is to the person. Reflection or shadow is certainly caused by the object, but at the same time, the object is not reduced or tampered with because its shadow has emerged out of it. Similarly, the ego center concept in us, the prana, is but the reflection of pure consciousness or life in our mind and intellect. We have already pointed out that mind is that mysterious nothing without which assumes for its for itself a certain stature and gesture when thoughts consistently flow one after another in our bosom. The pure life in us, consciousness or awareness, when it works through this flow of thoughts, expresses itself in a reflection shadow, which is the egocentric personality that we come to recognize almost always as ourselves. This ego center is always conditioned by the texture of our thoughts and the quality of their flow. When sad thoughts are flowing, the ego I is sad. When joyous thoughts are gliding down, the avenues of the mind, life reflected therein. The ego I is happy and joyous. If the thoughts are criminal, the I becomes the criminal. If the thoughts are godly, the I becomes godly. Thus, this ego center has been created certainly out of the Atman, but at the same time, the ego has not got any independent existence apart from the divine spark, our own self. In the language of the rishis, briefly stated, it becomes prana is the shadow of the Atman. When you are looking at a mirror, if the reflection grinning at you looks more like a monkey than a human being, you have only to congratulate yourself. A reflection cannot improve upon the original. It is always a faithful reflection of the object when the reflection medium is plain and smooth. As such, if the ego center in us looks almost divine in its activity and dynamism, capabilities and capacities, achievements and possibilities, it is because the glorious eternal self is the object that is getting reflected in our mind and intellect equipment. While traveling in a train, if you happen to consult the mirror in the toilet, you may feel that your nose and ears have independent movements of their own. Looking at the wagging nose, none of us need get frightened, for we certainly know that this movement of our nose is caused by the shaking of the mirror. In fact, the reflection entirely depends upon the reflecting medium. If the mind and intellect are without dirt and steady, the reflection should be true to the original. At the dressing table, the triple mirrors will give you a set of three different reflections of your single form sitting on the dressing stool. Just because three distinct reflections have been caused by you, you have not lost anything. Similarly, the pure awareness reflecting in our mind and thereby creating the ego center has not destroyed itself. As a seed, the ego brings forth the tree of samskars. In this Brahman, we have the answer to the next question also, which enquires into the manner in which the prana has come to get itself housed as an active center within our own body. It has come to express itself in this body owing to willing or wishing or desiring, which are all activities of the mind. When a cup is placed in the midday sun and some water is steadily poured into it, we all know that we will have a reflection of the sun in the cup of water. Looking at that water, if we are to wonder how the sun came into the cup, the only answer we can give is that it is created by the water. They alone understand the statement who can follow the argument. There may be some who would wonder how water can create the sun. Well, nobody can help them. Water, in fact, never created the sun. The water in the cup has become a reflecting surface, and all reflecting surfaces must reflect the objects in front of them. So too, had the Atman created the prana, when the mind reflecting medium came to be apparently constituted in front of it. In this stanza, you must understand that the word prana is the ego center and not the rhythmic business of taking in and giving out of air. The next question which the student asks, how the ego center gets its works done through the various energy substations, upapranas, located throughout the domain of the body. The following Brahman explains this and gives us an idea of the entire scheme of activity within. Mantra number 4. यथा सम्राडेवाधिकृतान् विनियुङ्क्ते एतान् ग्रामान् अधितिष्ठस्वेत्येवमेवैष प्राणः इतरान् प्राणान् पृथक् पृथगेव सन्निधत्ते. As the king appoints his officers, saying to them, reside here and govern these villages, so does the ego pran assign the other assistant prana, each to its separate department of activity. The nucleus of all activities and energy in the body is the ego center, ahankara, which gets its work done by the upapranas, just as the emperor or the chief minister gets his work done through the other ministers, and each one of the ministers in turn gets his work accomplished through the various departments of activity located at different provinces. The main activities of the body together constitute what is generally known as the activities of the living man, and they can all be classified under 5 different categories. It is to show these categories that we have started the discussion here. In this chapter, we will be getting a description of the various pranas and their respective allocation of duties. As the king appoints his governors and collectors in the various provinces of his domination to administer the allotted subdivisions of districts, so also here the ego center is distributing its work to the various upapranas. Each pranas has got its own definite jurisdiction and its department works strictly in obedience to a sacred law. Each department permanently functions from its headquarters fixed at a definite point in the body. From the analogy, we must also note the officers who are looking after their duties and administering the areas allotted to their jurisdiction do not act for their own sake, but for the glory of the king or the state. Similarly, here the upapranas are functioning in the various provinces of the body to contribute the maximum to the total exchequer of experiences gained by the ego center, the chief prana. Mantra number 5. पायूपस्थे अपानं चक्षुश्रोत्रे मुखनासिकाभ्यां प्राणः स्वयं प्रातिष्ठते मध्ये तु समानः एष ह्येतदुतमन्नं समं नयति तस्मादेताः सप्तार्चिषो भवन्ति. The apan dwells in the organs of excretion, and procreation, and the prana abides in the eye, mouth, and nose. In the middle, this saman functions, distributing the food equally, and the seven flames are fed from it. Here, the Rishi giving a list of names of different prana officers and the location of their individual district headquarters, which together give us a definite hint as to their respective functions. The apana resides in the organs of action for ejecting things from the body, and naturally it works mainly in the pelvic region. Its main fields of activity are the anus and the reproductory canal. The prana functions in the face, mainly in the eyes, ears, and nose, and is mainly responsible for the instruments of knowledge functioning with efficiency and effectiveness. Thus, in the upper extremity, the prana functions, and in the lower portion, the apana is active. In the area between these two provinces, mainly constituted by the belly, we have the samana, which functions in the food, digesting the food materials swallowed down, and in distributing the nutritious essence equally and efficiently to all parts of the body. If any part of the body is particularly overworked, it is the duty of the Saman to see that food is rushed to that area, and in this, the Saman is much more efficient than any of the known food departments that are working now in the modern world states. In our world today, if any minister or officer were to carry out his allotted duties as per standing orders, he is considered to be very efficient and is often congratulated. But the tradition in the body politic is something different. Merely fulfilling one's allotted duties is not sufficient in itself. An officer can be considered efficient only when he, in executing his own departmental obligations, provides something to the total state in terms of greater national welfare and greater happiness to the people. This is clearly indicated here when the Rishis say that as a result of the untiring activities of the Samana, the seven flames proceed from it. Passages such as these, without commentaries, would read like antiquated and meaningless thoughts which need restatements. The seven flames meant here are the seven main holes in a man's head: two ears, two eyes, two nostrils, and a mouth. Through each one of them, as it were, a peculiar kind of special light shoots out, which can illumine only one particular type of sense objects in the world. Thus, with the eyes we can illumine only the forms in things. A deaf man can only see the musician's mouth folding in contortions but cannot hear even a single note. The ears can illumine only sound. You may see a cake laddu and hear it spoken of 100 times, yet you will not know the taste of it, for taste can be recognized only by that beam of light that emerges from the tongue. To consider these powers of perception as seven flames emerging through the seven holes in the cranium is so poetic an expression and so scientific a statement that it needs no extra commentary. Mantra number 6. हृदि ह्येष आत्मा अत्रैतदेकशतनाडीनां तासां शतं शतमेकैकस्यां द्वासप्ततिर्द्वासप्ततिः प्रतिशाखा नाडीसहस्राणि भवन्त्यासु व्यानश्चरति. This Atman is in the heart. There are 101 nerves. Each of them has 100 branches. Again, every one of these has 72,000 sub-branches. In these, the van moves. The word Atman is used here in this Brahman not in the sense of the supreme reality, which being the all-pervading factor cannot be localized at a particular point in the body. Here, the Atman is used to denote the ego center, the supreme consciousness conditioned by the mind, intellect and body is called the ego center. In this Brahmana, the teacher is suddenly changing the topic as though for a new discussion, but this is only an apparent change. He is only using a new terminology. So far, we have been having a discussion on the prana in us dividing itself into the 5 departments of office. All of a sudden, here we have a statement, this Atman is in the heart. Naturally, what the Rishi means is this prana resides in the heart. If the ego center itself is the prana, why should the teacher all of a sudden change the terminology? In this, we have a really great technique of teaching worked out so as to hold the attention of the students continuously towards the discourse. This in itself is the fine art of teaching. The rishis have always exhibited a creditable mastery over the benevolent art of teaching. Over this benevolent art of teaching, at such a physiological moment by which a different terminology, he is not only checking us whether all the students are fully following him or not, but also providing an occasion to the students themselves to gather their wandering minds back again to the main topic and sharpen their attention a little more. Here, the word heart is used not in the sense of the physical organ thudding in our bosom on the left side of the chest. The term denotes only the mind. Pure consciousness reflected in the mind is the ego center. And to say that the ego is in the heart is as much true as to say that my face is in the mirror. The Brahman goes on to inform us that from this heart 101 nerves branch off. We have already seen that the heart is the mind. The mind is the subtle sheath made up of our thoughts. Therefore, the nerves that emerge out of it cannot be the same as the nerves of the doctor's conception. Nerves here, nadis, are subtler than the finest capillaries in circulatory system in the body, and they can be more appropriately described as astral tubes. Thus, from the mind, 101 different astral tubes emerge out, and each one of these primary nerves, mukhya, divides into 100 subdivisions, shakha nadis, forming among themselves 10,100 secondary nadis. Now, each one of these secondary nadis again multiplies into 72,000 branches, thus together forming a system of 72 crores, 72 lakhs, 10,201 in all. The idea of any factor, which in itself is as subtle as thought divided so minutely as to form over 72 crores, is a conception which has not yet been equaled even in these days of electron microscopes. Today, magnifying a thing one or other of a half lakh times is considered to be a stupendous achievement of the brave new world. In this network of astral tubes, we are told that the Vyana Shakti moves like a permanent cyclone around the structure of man. Among many other functions of the Vyana is to keep the circulation of blood always going, even in the minutest capillary, where the red and the white cor- corpuscles will have to be on the move all the time. Mantra number 7. अथैकयोर्ध्व उदानः पुण्येन पुण्यं लोकं नयति पापेन पापम् उभाभ्यामेव मनुष्यलोकम्. Again, through one special nerve, the Udana ascending leads us upward to the virtuous world by good work, and carries us to the lower worlds by sinful acts, and takes us to the world of men when sin and virtues are mixed. हरि ओम. हरि ओम. ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः.